A wild scene at the Rams and Bengals joint practice. Could Aaron Donald get suspended? That's next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Travis Rogers. Thanks for making us a part of what you do. Not only am I your host for Locked On Rams, I also host the Rams pre-half and post-game show on their flagship station, ESPN 710, right here in Los Angeles. And of course, you can hear that show coming up on Saturday afternoon. We will start it at 1 o'clock. Myself and my pal Kirk Morrison will have everything you need getting you ready for the Rams and the Bengals coming up on Saturday, the final preseason game of the year. We got a good one today. I want to talk about Andrew Whitworth potentially going back to the NFL and how in an odd way that could potentially benefit the Rams. I think it's unlikely, but I think it's certainly possible. His answer was a little bit cagey, which is always interesting. Plus, did Bryce Perkins get an opportunity to take over the number 2 quarterback spot? I think he did. We'll get into that in just a couple of minutes, but let's start right here. Let's start with what happened yesterday at Bengals practice, at the joint practice between the Bengals and the Rams. But before you do that, click that tab. Click that little plus, that little bookmark, that little check mark, whatever it is in your podcast feed. Subscribe to Locked On Rams so you get it every single day. Check out our Locked On Rams YouTube page as well. So, certainly an ugly situation yesterday, right? The Rams and the Bengals. So it was certainly ironic that this is the way that it ended up going, because Sean McVay has talked about how he did not want fights at practice, how he wanted to make sure that a lot of good work got done, that he and Zach Taylor both certainly have a similar philosophy and how these things are run, and he didn't expect to have any fireworks. And the first day kind of went according to plan. It didn't happen. Day 2, not so much. Couple of different dust-ups yesterday, including the one, and I'm sure that you've seen the video, and if you haven't, it'll take you 4 seconds to find it on Twitter or anywhere else that you want to go look for it. It got ugly. Aaron Donald, there's a video of him. He's got 2 Cincinnati Bengal helmets, one in each hand, and he's swinging them. And he's swinging one in particular that, landed, for lack of a better word. It's a bad scene. This, of course, took everybody that's watched football over the last few years to make, the Myles Garrett comparison in about 4 seconds. And it's not totally different. Here's the very, very good news for the Rams. He's not going to get suspended. And it's a simple, logistical reason why, an administrative reason why. The NFL does not have jurisdiction on what happens at practice. If you want to suspend somebody for what happens at practice, you need to do it yourself, right? This was not a game. It was 2 teams competing. It was 2 teams on the same with referees and coaching staffs and the whole thing, but it wasn't a game. It was a joint practice. Had this happened in the game on Saturday, he absolutely would be suspended. The question would only be, how long is he going to be suspended? How many games is he going to miss? What does this do to the Rams over the course of the suspension? Why did he do something so incredibly reckless? And that would be the conversation going into it. And we could talk a little bit about that in a second. But the fact that just administratively, the only people that can really suspend him in this are the Rams. I feel fairly confident in saying that the Los Angeles Rams are not going to make a decision on their own to suspend Aaron Donald heading into the start of the regular season. Nor would any other team in the NFL suspend their best player for something like this. Look, I'm not saying it wasn't ugly. It was. I'm not saying that this wasn't something that's a bad look for Donald, that this wasn't a reaction that can never happen. It should never happen. That when Myles Garrett hit Mason Rudolph the way that he did, it was a bad look for the NFL. The NFL came in hard. Of course, we have all those other speculations on why he did what he did, but put that aside for a second, because if that's true, certainly understand it. Regardless, Aaron Donald is not going to be suspended. Now, the question is there some sort of blueprint on how to get him on tilt? Is there some sort of hey, look, get him going? And because I keep going back to this, and this is a long time ago, but we've seen Aaron Donald kind of lose it occasionally. Go back to the very first game when the Rams were back here in Los Angeles during the 2016 season. And they play San Francisco on Monday night to open up the season. And he ends up getting kicked out of the game. He gets, he loses his cool, which is probably the nicest way of explaining what it was. So it's in him. And I think what makes him such a great player is that it's in him. What makes him so unbelievably effective on the football field is that he never stops, that none of this is anything other than, just whatever the next stop short of life and death situation is. He is competing every single moment to the point of sometimes you get on tilt a little bit and you do things that with a calm, cool, collected head and the cold, hard light of the day, you would never say, I'm going to rip a couple of guys' helmets off and start swinging them around. You would know. But in the moment, yeah, because, it just happened, right? The Rams got lucky. They did. Had this happened on Saturday instead of on Thursday, the way that it did, if this had happened Saturday in the preseason, Aaron Donald's missing a lot of time. The good news is it wasn't Saturday. It's Thursday. And I would imagine this is one of those this conversation between whether it's Sean McVay or Les Snead or whoever is in charge of having this conversation. My sense would be it's probably Sean McVay is, hey, listen, AD, love you. The reason I have this ring on my finger is because of you in large part. You're probably the best defensive player in the history of this league, certainly the best defensive player in the history of your position. Our window is you, all of these things. But, my man, you cannot do that, right? And I'm sure Aaron Donald's response is, yeah, no, I know. I never thought that I would, but I get it. It can't happen during the season. Because if they lose him for a period of time, we've talked about it before. We always talked about it in the construct of him getting injured, knocking on wood. But if he gets suspended because he swings a helmet at somebody, terrible, terrible. Great football player, by all accounts, a fantastic guy, but that's something that can't happen. And the Rams dodged a bullet that had happened in a practice as opposed to it happening in a game. All right, so Andrew Whitworth's phone is ringing. According to Andrew Whitworth, who's calling and could it benefit the Rams? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. Money problems and being tight and being a little short, it's tough, right? And especially if you're on a budget like most of us are, whether it's a weekly budget, a monthly budget, that pinch with cash at the end of that period of time can be scary, right? And we've all been in that situation where you're a little short, you need gas, you need to buy a present, whatever it might be, that, hey, look, I'm out and I need to get to the end of the week. It's not a great feeling. Dave can help you get out of that pinch when you really need it, right? You can't go back and redo all the things you've done so far, but what if you could get a little help from your future self? And that is what Dave does. It's the banking app that can help you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That's money to spend however you want to spend. Catch up on bills, put gas in the tank, however you need to spend it, you can spend it. There's no interest and there's no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief they need with extra cash. Here's how you do it. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's DAVE. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer rates do apply. Banking provided by Evolve, member FDIC. Take some of that pressure off, and future you will certainly thank you. Thanks again for making Locked On Rams your first listen every day. Make sure to check out the ultimate pro football preview starting August 31st, an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. The local team experts on the Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey NFL Insiders all combining into one ultimate NFL preview starting August 31st. Search for your ultimate pro football preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. So the days of retiring and that being that for professional athletes have never been kind of the way that most of us retire, right? Or at least aspire to retire. I'm still crossing my fingers that that day eventually comes in my life. I don't know, maybe not, right? Um, Athletes retire, and then whether it's a few months, a year or so later, they come back. Boxers, of course, are famous for this, but we've seen it. Rob Gronkowski retired, Tom Brady has retired. Guys retire and then decide that they want to come back and give it one last shot. So that Andrew Whitworth's phone has started to ring already is not a huge surprise, especially when you saw that Tyron Smith from the Dallas Cowboys, their tackle, had a hamstring injury. It's a very significant hamstring injury, and he's going to miss 3 or 4 months, if not more. Dallas is in full win now mode. So the last thing they can do is try to develop a player or just kind of suck it up and deal with it. They need to find a replacement at an incredibly important position on their team. And Andrew Whitworth is, quasi available because he's working for Amazon. He's still connected with the Rams in meaningful ways, which we'll get to in a minute. But it makes a whole bunch of sense that that's somebody that they would reach out to. And Andrew Whitworth was talking and said that people had reached out to him trying to talk him into playing for the Dallas Cowboys. It was a little cagey. It was a little coy. And because his answer wasn't, no, look, man, I'm done playing football. That was not what he said. His answer was, well, I'm not the one you need to convince. The one you need to convince is my wife and my children, that they're the ones that ultimately have veto power on whether or not I play more football, which is a big open-ended thing. Like, in other words, look, if I could talk my wife into it, yeah. If I could get my kids to sign off on it, yeah. So that was interesting. And then he doubled back and said, look, the Cowboys haven't reached out because tampering. The Cowboys haven't done anything. This is friends, family, reporters, this sort of thing. Cowboy fans saying, hey, why don't you come on over? Just to be very extra clear. So that's part one of this. Part two of this is the Rams still retain his rights. The Rams are the right. He had 1 year left on his contract when he retired at the end of last season. There was this season, the 2022 season, the Rams have his rights, which means if he wants to go play football for somebody that's not the Los Angeles Rams, the Rams need to be compensated. The Rams would either have to just outright release him, which at this point, why do that, right? Because it's doesn't benefit them at all. And not that they're, monstrous in that way or vindictive in that way. But look, we own this asset. We're not just going to give it to you because you need it. You need to purchase it from me. You need to give me something. So it in an odd way, the Rams are kind of in an interesting spot. Now, let's just look at this from a pure football perspective. Andrew Whitworth, have you seen him? He still looks like he could walk onto a field and play tomorrow. He looks great. He's always kept himself in unbelievable physical. I know I say this a lot. He is the definition of why professional athletes are superheroes. And I'm just talking purely physical, right? They're just bigger, stronger, faster, better than you, than me, than 99.9% of the world's population. He's 6'7", 330 pounds and lean. Those guys don't exist unless it's Rob Havenstein down on the other side of the line. So that he could walk right back in and do it, I think he could. I think he would help the Dallas Cowboys. I think that's a really smart thing for them to investigate, to look into. Can he save what could be a catastrophic injury and at least keep us, humming along? And by the way, of all the things the Dallas Cowboys, having that dude walk in and the presence that he brings would be incredibly beneficial to them. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea at all. It's a good idea. Maybe the Rams could get something out of it, right? Rob Gronkowski, when he unretired to go to Tampa, the Tampa had to send a 4th-round pick to the New England Patriots to get it done. If the Rams could swing something like that, and by the way, the Cowboys are kind of dumb in the way that they do things. So if you could get, maybe it's a 4th-round pick, maybe it's better than that. Maybe, you're of all the things that the Rams have been really good at doing with the draft, that's not, the F them picks thing, is give me late round picks. I'm going to find a starter here or there. I'm going to, maybe not a starter, but I'm going to find somebody that plays meaningful snaps for me in this league. If you could get something for a guy that you weren't, I don't want to say weren't planning on using, because they would have loved to have had him, but they've moved on, right? They have their left tackle in Joe Noteboom. Andrew Whitworth, it would be incredibly awkward if all of a sudden you're playing against him in a playoff situation. They play the Dallas Cowboys this year, so that could be something that they ultimately end up doing as well. But this is beneficial to the Rams because if you could get something, even if it's a late round pick, and it could be beneficial for Andrew Whitworth too if he wants to continue to play, could be beneficial to the Dallas Cowboys if they want to continue to pursue this. But he's not just going to be able to walk over there if he wants to. In worst case scenario, the Rams are going to get something out of this. Still don't think it happens because kids and wife are a powerful draw, especially if they don't want you to do it. But so's money and so's playing football when you still can do it. We will see. I don't think it happens, but if it does, I think ultimately the Rams will get something pretty good out of it. Okay. Is Bryce Perkins the number 2 quarterback on the Rams? I got a case that he is. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. What about that weird live golf? We got odds on that yet? BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts that got you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. And here's something we're going to do with BetOnline. I want to do it next week. I want to kind of go through some of the odds on some awards, right? Some, Defensive Player of the Year, MVP, division winner, conference winner, all of these things, and kind of figure out where some value in these might be. So we'll use the BetOnline lines to kind of figure that out and see where maybe some opportunities may lie. All right, so final preseason game is just a day or so away, and then we can start getting into the stuff that really matters. But a couple of unanswered questions going into the final game against Cincinnati. Again, pregame show starts at 1 o'clock on ESPN 710 here in LA. Yours truly will be hosting the pregame show alongside Kirk Morrison. Kickoff is at 3 o'clock. Then we'll have the postgame show immediately following that as well. This has been a really interesting evolution of the backup quarterback spot this offseason. And what it is it's not dissimilar to what we saw John Wolford do a few years ago, which is he's kind of a guy that's there that, maybe a practice arm, a camp arm, guy's not so bad. Let's see. And then all of a sudden he's the number 2 quarterback and he's starting a playoff game. And it's weird how these things kind of come out of nowhere. But this is what the progression has been for the Rams at QB2 this year. This has gone from, hey, listen, John Wolford got more reps with the ones than Matthew Stafford did during training camp. John Wolford may have to play games this season. John Wolford played an important game 2 years ago when Jared Goff was hurt. He started a playoff game. He's an important part of what we're doing. So he's not going to play in the first preseason game of the year. And he did. Fast forward to week number 2. And it's, we're going to take a look at John Wolford in the first half against the Houston Texans. And we're going to play Bryce Perkins in the second half. And Bryce Perkins had a great game against the Chargers in week 1, but we're going to give him the second half. We're going to see both of these guys out there. We just want to kind of see where everybody is. To fast forward to where we are right now, week 3 of the preseason, John Wolford's not going to play. John Wolford has a fingernail injury on his thumb, and according to Sean McVay, if he weren't a quarterback or it weren't on his right hand, he's a right-handed quarterback, it wouldn't be a big deal. It would be a complete non-issue, but it's something that the nail's probably going to fall off. It's uncomfortable for him to hold on to the football, so he's not going to play. Let me paint a picture for you. Bryce Perkins is going to get to take every snap, probably, unless John Wolford figures out a way to get on the field in the next, 12 to 24 hours. Bryce Perkins is going to go out there, take every snap. What if it looks really good? What if he goes out there and really shines? What if he goes out there and looks like an NFL quarterback? Now what? John Wolford's got a bad thumb. John Wolford, looked okay against the Texans, got sacked 5 times. More a function of his offensive line playing poorly than anything else, but, sacked 5 times. Bryce Perkins is somebody that clearly they're trying to find a reason to keep him on the roster. Bryce Perkins has, to me, seemingly more upside as far as what you could do in an offense with a player like Perkins as opposed to a player like Wolford. And Wolford can move his feet and he's athletic and those sorts of things, but Perkins seems to be a little bit better at those ideas. And again, we're talking QB2. We're not talking about succession for Matthew Stafford. We're talking about quarterback number 2. So if you have one guy played all of game 1, played really well, played half of game 2, played pretty well, and then plays really well in all of game 3, you're telling me that guy's not your number 2 quarterback? You're telling me the guy that really hasn't played a meaningful snap at this point in almost a couple of years is still the guy? I'll listen to it, but all evidence tells me that you're thinking the other thing. I'm just saying that this is far closer than I think anybody realized it was when it started. It's because it is. I'm sure that the gap was, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, neck and neck, 10 being a no-brainer. I'm sure that this was something that was an 8, right? This feels a lot more like a 2 or a 3 now because of all of the things that we've just talked about. Bryce Perkins has a chance not just to make this team. Bryce Perkins, I really believe, has a chance to be QB2 if he goes out there and lights it up on Saturday against the Bengals. I firmly believe that. And you can't convince me otherwise because we've seen what we've seen. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Rams. Thanks for making us your first listen every single day. Now it's time for Fantasy Draft Week on the Locked On Podcast Network. So make the Locked On Fantasy Football your second listen. Fantasy expert Vinny Eiler, who brings over 20 years of NFL expertise and unique angles to give you the moves no one else has. Get ready for your fantasy draft with Locked On Fantasy Football. Until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.